Warning: the following content may be disturbing to some individuals. Consumer discretion is advised.
Sirens of the Supernatural.
Hey there, it's Rhonda and Lindsay from Sirens of the Supernatural. And as promised, we are here at the Martha Washington Inn, staying in room 403, supposedly the most haunted room in the inn. But we're learning throughout the day that it's one of many haunted places in and around the inn. And we've just been enjoying this beautiful building for most of the evening, and the grounds are gorgeous.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty.
It is. And we had a chance to go sit in the library and just relax by the fire, which we'll tell you about more in a minute. But we wanted to make sure that you guys could see the entirety of the room. So we're going to span around. We have a little sitting area here, but the rest of the room has a bed and some older furniture. It's very nice. It's quite a large room, and it has a modern bathroom and a large closet.
It's like they did some updating and renovations, but it still very much has the vibe of an like old-timey hotel room.
Yeah, it does. And we have some extra lighting in here because it was kind of dark. There are overhead lights and many lamps, but we're on the very top floor. And as heat rises, you may hear the air kick on in here. We're trying to cool it off a little bit. If some ghosts would show up, that would
it's like Beth, you can show up anytime. Lower the temperature a little bit.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful location, and we have taken some videos around the property that we will also include in this episode so that you guys can see all that we've taken in today. It's beautiful. And as far as the building goes, we wanted to tell you some things about the building and how old it is and how much history is in these walls. And a lot of this info comes from the Martha.com website and the Vintage Traveler website. And also I visited a website called Haunted Places to Go, just to see, if I could put together a timeline of the building itself.
Well, then we'll have to go more haunted places.
True. So in 1832, this building was built as a private home in Abingdon, Virginia, here where we are, by General Francis Preston for his family, Sarah, and 9 children. So they needed a large house, and he was rather wealthy. And at that time, it cost $15,000 to build their home. Now, all of the wings that are on the building now weren't here when the original home was built. Yeah, but it was still a large building. And that was in 1832. In 1858, the home was purchased for $21,000 and turned into an upscale finishing school for young ladies. The school was named Martha Washington College after America's first lady, who had been dead for about 60 years at that time. And for more than 70 years, young ladies who had graduated high school could attend the college here for 2 years, while those who had attended 2 years of high school could stay for 4 years. And we've seen so many pictures on the walls of
graduating
faces.
classes and like pictures in action of things that they did.
And they had a ballroom, and they had there were pictures of them in the gym, wherever the gym was at that time, doing their calisthenics. And then,
which was nice because back then there wasn't really a lot of women's education opportunities, especially in the South. So it's a big deal.
It was a big deal. And I'm sure it was a very pleasant place to come and
it looked so cute.
And learn.
It looked really nice.
Yeah, I would have loved to have come here if I had been alive at the time. You know, I would have loved to come here.
Absolutely.
And there was a boys' college
Mm-hmm.
here in Abingdon already established at that time, and so I'm sure many young ladies wanted to come here.
Was
One
that
of
Emory or no?
that was William King.
Yeah, William
King?
King. Yeah. Which is just right down the hill
Yeah.
up the road. Now
So,
it's a museum.
Oh, now that makes me wonder if they ever got together, like to have dances
I'm
or
sure
something
they
like
had
that.
socials and
The
stuff. That
girls'
was so-
college and the boys'
Yeah,
college.
I'm sure that was so cute.
Oh, that's great. One of the parlors downstairs is named in honor of a young woman who studied here in 1889. She was the future wife of our 28th president, Woodrow Wilson, First Lady Edith Wilson, and the parlor is named after her. And so all of these years, you know, they're turning out all of these refined young ladies from this college. And then in 1861, the Civil War breaks out. And during the years between 1861 and 1865, the college grounds here served as a training barracks for the Washington Mounted Rifles. Skirmishes between the North and South, between those troops, happened in and around Abingdon here and resulted in wounded soldiers on both sides that needed care. And so this college became a makeshift hospital, and its students became nurses caring for the sick and wounded soldiers from both sides of the conflict. So you can imagine what a different perspective those young ladies got here at the school.
Yeah.
As compared to the ones that had graduated earlier. But they had to become nurses and caregivers overnight.
Completely different world.
Mhm.
I bet.
So, and we'll tell you some more stories about some things that happened during the Civil War years later. But around 1931 or 32, the Martha Washington College closed. It survived the Civil War, the Great Depression, and the typhoid fever outbreak that swept through this area. And the school's enrollment numbers had decreased quite a bit. So when they closed this as a college, the building sat vacant for several years, which is sad to me.
I bet it was creepy though.
Well, it wasn't vacant, but for about 3 or 4 years. And then someone decided to open it as a hotel, which was an ingenious idea.
Yeah.
So they did, and the hotel over the next 50 years changed owners numerous times. And then in 1984, the United Company bought the inn and began renovating it, and they wanted to bring back, to preserve the architecture here and to bring back the antiques and restore it to its original glory. And they have done a smash bang up job. They made it even more luxurious and attractive for visitors. As a matter of fact, it is now known as the Martha Washington Inn and Spa. And listen to this. Guests here can enjoy the accommodations that include a spa, a fitness center, tennis courts, a world-class pool, it's so nice, and jacuzzi, a golf course, and more. And it's also an official historic landmark of the city of Abingdon, and it's recognized as one of the Camberley Hotel Company's fine historic properties. Fun facts, Presidents Harry Truman and Jimmy Carter, as well as First Ladies Eleanor Roosevelt and Lady Bird Johnson, and even the actress Elizabeth Taylor have been guests here. Now, I don't know if they stayed in the haunted room here where we are, but I thought that was some fun facts.
Yeah.
So, current day, the official website for this property, themartha.com, tells us that the original brick residence was built over a century and a half ago, makes up the hotel's current central structure. So the main lobby that we saw when we came in is the Preston's original living room.
I'm sure the library was in there.
I'm sure. You'll see that later.
It's beautiful.
And the stairway and the parlors look much like they did in the 19th century when the family was living here. And another fun fact is in the Edith Wilson parlor, there's a beautiful and rare Dutch Baroque grandfather clock more than 9 feet tall. One of the Preston daughters had it shipped from England, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of how wealthy they were. Okay, so we have been all around and up and
All
down.
over.
And what's your favorite? The library?
So library,
The
yeah,
library?
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, vibes immaculate, 10 out of 10.
Yes, and there was something about it was a whole different vibe after dark
Yeah.
when they had the fireplace going and everything than
Yeah.
it was during the daytime. And during the daytime, it's also really nice to sit. The porches and balconies here are
Yeah.
just amazing. They have
So
rocking
open
chairs
and
and
nice and comfy.
and it's been a beautiful day today. We were very blessed with a beautiful day. It's been warm enough to wear a t-shirt outside. And tonight there's a big full moon out. It's just been great.
And when we came in, they're doing like trunk or treat on Main Street. So there were a ton of little trick or treaters. So we got to see everybody's costumes.
Yep.
It was just very fall Halloween vibes, which I loved.
I love that too. And I got some video footage from the window when we first got here that we'll throw up on YouTube too. We're just wanting to include you on everything. So we've heard about the building, but now let's hear a little bit about why this is considered the most haunted building in Virginia. We don't hear much about paranormal activity here until the Civil War period. But during that time and after, there have been many, many reports, and here are a few of the more popular ones. And this first one actually has to do with the room that we're in.
Hit me with it. I'm ready.
Okay, love and war. So during the Civil War, there was a student here named Beth, and she helped nurse the wounded soldiers that were brought here to Martha. A badly wounded Union captain named John Stokes found himself here under her care in this very room. In addition to nursing him, the kind-hearted Beth often played her violin to comfort him. Over time, they fell in love, as often happens. But sadly, one day, knowing that he was dying, the captain called for Beth to play something on her violin for him. When he breathed his last, she was brokenhearted, and reportedly, she told the attending physician, "He's been pardoned, sir, by an officer higher than General Lee. Captain Stokes is dead." The grieving young woman took some comfort from knowing that her sweetheart was no longer suffering. But just 3 weeks after he died, she also died of typhoid fever. Together for such a short time here on earth, the two rest in death in the Green Springs Cemetery nearby. And if you'll notice, this picture behind us on the wall here shows a young lady playing a violin. Music was taught here to the young ladies at the college. We're not sure if this is Beth, but it kind of gives you a picture of a young lady from the time.
Yeah,
And you can imagine Beth. The story doesn't end there, however. Violin music is sometimes heard playing on the floor, in the hallway. Some have seen a man dressed in soldier attire walking the hallway. And this room where the captain died is supposedly haunted. Some guests that have stayed in this room have seen an apparition believed to be Beth. And this is the room we're staying in tonight, so
I hope we see her. That would be cool.
just be nice to us, Beth, if you're here. And here's another love story. You gotta love a love story, right? Another love story tells of a Confederate soldier and his college sweetheart. Tagged with informing General Robert E. Lee where the Union Army was stationed, this young soldier knew his job was a dangerous one. So before he left on his mission, he came here to say a final farewell to his love. He entered the college at night using secret tunnels and stairs. We'll talk more about those secret tunnels later.
That.
But 2 Union soldiers saw him and shot him. And it said that he died at his poor girlfriend's feet, and that the blood spilled from his mortal wound continuously stains the floor, no matter how many times the spot is cleaned or what it is covered with.
Where at? Where?
I don't know.
Is it in the tunnel? Is it out of the tunnel?
No, it was here on the ground somewhere in maybe the lobby area or something like that. I don't know. We need to ask. That's a question that I'm going to have for the front desk is where this supposedly
I wonder if
happened.
they know, though.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
don't
stories
know.
at stake like this. I've never heard this story before.
I had heard this when I was
Really?
a little girl. I grew up probably 30, 40 minutes from here, and we would come here to town, to shop or eat or things. And I had always heard those first two stories about Beth and then about the blood stain on the floor. That was a popular one that I'd heard. But I couldn't find in my research where exactly that happened on the property.
So curious.
I know, me too. And then I will save this last story I found because we have been with a special guest this evening. She leads a ghost tour here in the town, and she was gracious enough to let us videotape her last story, which has to do with a haunted horse. So we'll save that for her. A riderless phantom horse.
Yeah, because she tells it so much better
She
than I
does.
could ever tell
Yes,
it.
she knows
So good.
so much history.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she told us was that if we would ask the night shift here, that there is a notebook that the staff keeps where they record either their own experiences or ones that guests tell them.
Yeah.
And so we asked, after the ghost tour, we came back and we asked at the front desk, and the gentleman there knew exactly where it was, and he got it, and we took it into the library, and we read
a bunch of stories.
Read a bunch of stories by the fireplace,
Yeah.
and that was really cool. We've got some of those that we are going to share on social media with you.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part of being in the library reading those stories, and what stuck out to you?
My two favorites were all of the stories that we heard about the globe and how it moved. Because there's this huge wooden globe, very heavy globe in there in the corner of the library. And a lot of the stories had to do with that globe moving on its own. And so when we went over there to move it, first of all, it takes some effort to move that thing. I mean, it's a heavy wooden globe.
And it's in a big wooden stand.
But the sound that it makes is it's like the stereotypical creepy, like creaking noise. Like it's so like right up my alley. I was like, oh, I love this so much. And it's very distinctive. And I also kind of heard, I don't know if you heard this, but when we tested it both times, it was like the same exact noise both times. So very obvious to anybody working here what it would be. And then my other favorite story that we read, and we didn't record this one, but it was about a guest that stayed, I think, in 404 that had their face scratched. And the person recording it wasn't the guest. It was like somebody at the front desk. And they said that this person was actually a detective that was here to work on a cold case that she was working on where a girl had been raped and murdered, not here, but the guy that did it had relocated to Johnson City, and so she was here to collect some DNA. And I just thought that was so interesting.
That was very interesting.
Yeah.
That would be weird. It would be weird to wake up and, even if you didn't see anything, to feel something. And one of the stories...
There was some other ones, too, about getting scratched.
About getting scratched and, scratched enough to bleed. They were bleeding. And then there was one that creeps me out about a young lady that stayed here and felt hands pulling her by the ankle.
In bed.
And she was so scared that she went down to the front desk and said, I'm not staying in that room. And so they moved her.
They switched her rooms.
They moved her to another room.
Was that your favorite part of tonight?
Oh, so many favorites tonight. But that story, I think, was one of my favorites. And then the other one you were saying about the globe, the front desk area is right beside the library.
Yeah,
and so
right there. You can
if
see the
you
glow.
are working the front desk at night, there's no, I mean, you're the only one down there, and this is a huge building, and so if you were working if I was working the front desk and I heard that globe moving, and it said one of the night attendants heard it 5 or 6 times in the same night, and there was no one else downstairs.
I'd be leaning over the desk every time. Like, hello?
I don't know. Yeah.
Can y'all stop or like we get it? We hear you. Can you calm down?
Yeah. But it's weird because it's a paradox because you're here and it's so cozy and then you read these stories like this, and I don't know if it makes your imagination go a little bit wilder.
But some of the stories were even like, we didn't know anything about the ghost stories when this happened, and whether that was true or not, whatever. But some people probably do come here not knowing any of the history and do have some weird experiences. But I also thought it was interesting that on one hand you have ghosts scratching people and yanking their ankles, but then there was another story about this woman was looking all over for a bath mat or a towel to use as a bath mat, couldn't find one in her whole room, so she was just like, okay, whatever, I'll take a shower. And then she gets out of the shower and somebody had like perfectly placed, or something had perfectly placed a hand towel for her to get out of the shower, and she was like, it just made me smell so big. I was so happy with the ghosts. Like, are they good or are they not good? What's going on?
I don't know.
It made me laugh.
You know,
it's probably the best of both worlds, honestly.
It probably is, and the building has been here so long and has seen so many different lives come through here. It would be interesting to know all of the history and the things that these walls have heard and seen, especially when you think about a gruesome time like the Civil War, when, I mean, soldiers were in pain, they were dying, and these poor girls, they went from taking, etiquette classes and music classes and French classes to, having to give up their room, their bed, and work
and like bandage up these men who were missing limbs and bleeding out. I could never. Like, I'm not good with that stuff, so I would not be good with that.
Right. And the town probably had maybe 1 or 2 doctors at that time, and I didn't realize. I'm a big Civil War history buff, and I didn't realize how many skirmishes had happened around here. Yeah. I never realized that the grounds were used as like training barracks. There were like literally camped out soldiers, outside on the grounds doing their training exercises and things.
Me neither. And that really made me wonder, because I just live right up the street. So now I'm like,
oh, now you're like, I wonder if anything happened.
Well, I wonder
my houses.
Probably not like training all the way that far down, but like I wonder if there was any Civil War like action anywhere near there.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
It does.
I mean, my house wasn't built until like 1945, but still, like the grounds in that area around them.
Yeah,
I'm curious now. I really wonder.
Yeah, you should do some research on that, or maybe not. Maybe
I might. I mean, I think it would be interesting to know.
Yeah, it would. And we mentioned about a tunnel. Secret tunnels. Right across the street is the Border Theater, which is the nation's longest running professional theater. And it opened in 1932. And it's said that there was a tunnel built to connect underground the theater with the Martha Washington.
And isn't there one that goes down to the Cave House too? Or am I crazy?
I think you're right. I think there is
a
tunnel that goes, down to the Cave House. But the actors, that were in these plays often stayed here when the inn was, first opened as a hotel in 1935. And maybe they were real popular, and people wanted to see them in a costume afterwards, and they just had a late night and were tired and wanted to come here and go to sleep, and so they would go through the tunnels.
Maybe it kind of ruins the illusion too to see an actor in their costume off stage, so they didn't want to ruin that for everybody. So I can see why they would want another entrance and exit.
But evidently, people in the town and even the soldiers knew about the secret tunnels. Because the one soldier, that's how he got over here to say goodbye to his sweetheart. But the tunnels, the stories that you hear about the tunnel that runs from here across the street to the border, say that the tunnels are haunted, and you can often hear things down there that are creepy, disembodied voices and things like that. So I don't know where the tunnel is or how you would get in there. I would love to go in there sometime.
I would die.
I just don't know if they've closed them up due to safety reasons or whatever, But surely there's someone out there who knows if the tunnel's still open.
And if you're watching,
Yeah. On the
let
very
us go
rare
in
chance
there.
that you're watching our
Please let
podcast.
us go in there.
Because, we could be back. Lindsay just lives right down the road.
Oh yeah, I'll come anytime.
And I live about, an hour and a half from here. And I've always, ever since I was a little girl, and we would come to town and we would pass by here, I was amazed. I was in awe of the place and how beautiful it was. And I always wanted to stay here.
Me too.
And so
This is the first time I've ever been in here. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
I know. So we're not sure what we're going to capture tonight, but we are going to use our digital recorder, and we have a night cam that we're going to set up to see if we can capture.
to capture the whole room. Like we're gonna
Yeah.
set it up here so we can see
So it can see,
everything.
and it's motion, a motion
Motion
detection.
activated, so-
Yeah. So who knows what we'll capture in here when the lights go down.
And I do think I would be remiss if I didn't say that. What was the name of the family that first built this house?
The Prestons.
The Prestons allegedly, now I haven't done a ton of research, but allegedly did own slaves. And there were some dark history about the treatment of those slaves. So while the Martha Washington is beautiful and really nice, there are some heavier parts that I think it's important to bring attention to.
Right. That's right. That was a whole different time for people
Yeah.
of color, and we definitely
Awful.
want to bring attention to that.
I've not really heard any ghost stories involving possible like slave spirits, but that was definitely a thing that happened. If not here, definitely in the town of Abingdon.
For sure.
Because I know that I went to Emory and Henry College, which is just up the road, and I know that there was a history of slavery
In that
at
area.
Emory. Yeah, there was some slaves that worked on campus.
Oh, really?
I think so. And I don't think it was for very long, but I do know that there was a history. Because I follow them on Instagram, and they had posted something on Instagram about one of the people of color that worked on the grounds, and something about how she achieved something at the college, did something for the college. And when I went to Emory, we didn't really talk about, I never really heard anything about slavery at the college until they had made that post. And I was like, huh.
I don't remember it 5 years.
Yeah, and I don't remember anybody ever saying anything about that, which, we're still in the South, so it could be swept under the rug. We don't really like to talk about that, but it is a part of the history from here, unfortunately. Yeah.
So, on that note, we'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to do after this recording. We're going to set up our camera, our night cam, kind of going to turn the lights down. I don't think I'll be getting any sleep tonight. I'm not sure, but
I'm probably going to doze off here and there, yeah, for sure.
we're going to,
I'm tired.
So we're going to do some things with the digital recorder, see if we can capture any voices or anything like that. And anything that we capture on camera, on digital, we will share with you guys. And
Fingers crossed.
yes, fingers crossed.
We'll see.
This episode will drop on Halloween. So you'll be seeing us when you're celebrating Halloween. It's still a few days away for us, but we wanted to make it the spookiest that we could for you all. And another thing I have to mention, our fellow co-host Ryan was going to be here with us and wanted so much to be here with us tonight, but his family is sick with strep throat and he's not feeling too great himself. So shout out to Ryan. We're going to try to do it right. And we want to include him in some way. So we've been messaging back and forth with him throughout the evening so that he's real anxious to know if we picked up any activity or what's going on. He's really gung-ho about that. So I hope we get something for him. And we'll see you guys on the flip side.
See you on the flip side.
Stay spooky. For more than 25 years, Donna Marie Emmert, the Haint Mistress of Abingdon, has shared the town's secrets, legends, and ghost stories on her guided spirit tours. She has a master's degree in storytelling and, to quote her, an outrageous love for all things Halloweeny and that go bump in the night, and a ferocious attraction to history. So combined, these skills make for memorable entertainment for guests on her tours. We've had the privilege of being on one of her tours, and she was gracious enough to let us record the last story of her tour in Abingdon on October 28th, 2023. Here's the Haint Mistress.
Full moon, would you like to howl?
Yes.
Count of 3. 1, 2, 2 3/4. 3. Oh! Not bad. Not bad. Good job. Good job, everybody. Well, I have always said that if Abingdon was an egg, the courthouse would be the yolk, because it sits pretty much in the center of the original 120 acres that was given originally to make this town. Now, our courthouses have always sat on top of this hillside, one side of the street or the other. The story I'm going to tell you tonight deals with the third courthouse, the one that sat here before this one did. But first, a little background information. In the 1850s, Abingdon was a very prosperous town. Very prosperous. I mean, first of all, we had the train come through town. And if you've ever seen a Western in your life, you know how important that was. Well, we also had, according to the 1860 census in this county, we had 100 water wheels. 50 of them were for grinding grain, the other 50 were for sawing lumber. That's a lot of stuff going on. We had a major wagon manufacturer here in town. It's called Hayden Wagons. Beautiful, beautiful vehicles. Some of them still exist today and are still used. We also had 2 institutions of higher learning. We had the Abingdon Male Academy, which you all know today as the William King Museum. That place was supposed to be on par with the Citadel, okay? Then we had the Martha Washington Girls College open. Little footnote, Martha Washington never set foot in that place, okay? If she had, she'd have scared the hell out of us, because when it opened, she'd already been dead for 60 years. But you are sitting in Washington County, Virginia, and someone said, well, we named something for the husband, now we're gonna name something for the wife, and that's how we got that story, got that name. Well, everything is going wonderfully well until April of 1861. And of course, that's when the Civil War broke out. Now, originally, everyone in the nation said, this war is going to be over in 3 weeks. And all the able-bodied young men rushed off to go fight. And then everybody said, this war is going to be over in 6 weeks. Well, we saw how that happened. But Abingdon continued to prosper, but things slowed down. And by 1864, we were no longer prosperous. In fact, we were pitiful. All the farmers had essentially signed up to go fight, and there was nobody to put out crops. Then that fall, there was no furlough granted for the farmers to come home and harvest, so there went that. That summer, there had been 2 epidemics that swept through this town. One of them was said to be yellow fever, and the other was typhoid. 2 very horrible ways to die. And by the end of the summer, the very weak, the very old, and the very young were all dead. And just when we thought it could not get any worse, the middle of December of '64, we had a Union troop movement called Stoneman's Raid move through this town. Now, Stoneman's men had taken a page from the playbook written by General Sherman. A little footnote on that. On the eve of setting fire to Atlanta, Sherman actually sent a telegram to Abraham Lincoln saying, don't you think we need to be doing the same thing to Abingdon? Well, it happened. Stoneman's Raid was burning its way through East Tennessee, coming through Southwest Virginia, and coming toward us. They stomped Kingsport. They stomped Goodson, which today, of course, is Bristol. However, when they got to us, they were a little kinder, and I'm not exactly sure why. I have been told that a number of the officers in Stoneman's group had family here in town, and they didn't want to burn their families' homes down. Then I read that when Stoneman's men were marching in, they were met by a group of concerned citizens with a signed petition asking them to please stay. Because remember, when you have no men, you have no law. And there were bad things that were happening out in that county. There were arsons and robberies. There had been a couple of murders. We had bushwhackers. And we would rather have been occupied than just left alone. Well, Stoneman's Raid said thanks, but no thanks, and they began to set fire to the town. However, they set fire to the train depot, and right across the street was Hurt's grocery store. They had been supplying a Confederacy, so they got burned out. The jail was burned, some buildings that had been used for barracks, the original newspaper office, because you always take out communications, and down where the Methodist church is now, there was a stable. Well, the man had been supplying fresh horses to the Confederacy. So when the Union came in, they took what they wanted, and they burned it down. And when they were done, they left. Now, if you had been a citizen here in this town at that time, you would not have been sleeping comfortably that night. You probably weren't sleeping at all. Everybody was really afraid of what could happen next. And that's the reason there were so many people out in the street that night. Who saw what did happen next. About midnight, one Union soldier rode up to the front of this old courthouse. He threw his reins down to a man who was standing here. Climbed the steps, kicked open the doors, and the next thing we knew, our courthouse was on fire. Then he came out with a torch in his hand, and he zigzagged across Main Street, and he set fire to every building and every business for just about over a block. And then he marched back up the middle of Main Street, got on his horse, and instead of riding away, he sat here and he watched. And he was very happy with himself. When folks got close enough to him that they could see his face, they recognized him. He was from Abingdon. His name was James Wyatt. And the last time he'd been in this courthouse, things had not gone his way. This was a revenge burning, of which there were many toward the end of the war. He had found no justice here, and all those businesses and all those buildings he'd set on fire, they belonged to the man he'd been in a lawsuit with. It was perfect. Only his undoing was he sat here and he gloated. Well, there was a band of Confederate soldiers on the next rise over. They saw the new flames in the Abingdon night sky and they rode into town. Now, if you had been a little further down the street, you would have seen James Wyatt riding hell-bent for leather right down the middle of Main Street with 4 men behind him shooting at him. And this entire hillside was ablaze. None of those bullets hit him until he reined his horse to the left of Church Street to make good his escape. And when he did, one of those mini balls hit him square in the spine. And as his horse topped the hill, he came out of the saddle. And the horse continued on. And it's that horse that continues on to this very day. Folks have said that when they've been sitting on the front porch of the Martha Washington in broad daylight, a horse just comes out of nowhere, dashes the drive in front of them, and then disappears. Others have said that when they've been spending the night at the Martha, especially on a full moon, they've looked out the windows on the back and down in the meadow, down next to the railroad tracks. There's a horse in its full gear down there grazing very peacefully. And they can't understand why it's there. Well, if they asked me, I could tell them it's the ghost horse of the Martha Washington or the ghost horse of Barber Green. It's all the same horse. Well, now this is Abingdon's best known ghost story. And it also just happens to be true. Now, I've told this story for years, and I've always had kids come up to me and they say, "Oh, I've seen that horse." And I always think to myself, it's like, "Yeah, I'm sure you have." And then I'm thinking to myself, "Good job tonight, all right." Then I had a very serious young woman come up to me and she said, "You know that story is true, don't you?" I said, "Sweetheart, please." I said, "Come on." I said, "It's a story." I said, "It's a darn good story, but it's a story." She said, "No," she said, "you don't understand." She said, "My husband is on the police force here in town, and he answered a 911 call from a very upset motorist on Main Street, Abingdon. Will someone please come catch this crazy horse that's running loose in front of the Martha Washington?" He pulls up out front, gets out of his car, and what's standing in the middle of Main Street? A horse. They looked at each other. The horse then turned, ran up on Barber Green, and disappeared. How could I argue with that? So, all I can say is, if you're walking down Main Street, Abingdon, day or night, and you hear a clip-clop behind you, it is not going to be from a carriage ride. So, them's my stories. I hope you've had an enjoyable evening. And you might be thinking to yourself, "Oh, well, you know, that was kind of fun. I learned a couple of things, but it wasn't really scary." Well, tonight, when you go to bed, and you pull your little covers up under your chin, you're going to think about me. Thank you all very much, and happy Halloween. Yay!